So Ulrik, we were just in the session about physical activity guidelines and talking about people achieving them in different ways. And of course, the topic of this conversation is about walking. And one of the things that we do within Exercise Medicine in Canada and training healthcare professionals is we say that just telling people to move or just telling people to exercise usually doesn't work, that they need some more specific recommendations. And one of the things that we do is breaking down the guideline of 150 minutes a week. Well, what is that at moderate intensity? What would that be? And so for walking, for example, 100 steps per minute, and you could, if you do 10 minutes, you'd get 1,000 steps. But so we give some individual guidelines to help people kind of get the ball rolling to an individualized prescription. But the one thing I really liked about your presentation and the PI and the physical activity intelligence is that you kind of take individualization to a whole nother level. So maybe tell us a little bit more about how this new metric could relate to physical activity.
Yeah, so what we have done is to follow people for more than 26 years, 45,000 people, and we have been able to define how much do you actually need of physical activity per week in order to stay healthy longer.
Yeah.
And we made this scale from that goes from 0 to 100 and beyond, but it's 100 that is the maximum benefit or optimal benefit. And we don't say to people how they should reach 100 pi points. You just say that you have to find out that yourself. So if you prefer to do high intensity training, you can do that, and then you achieve 100 pi easier or earlier.
More quickly.
Or you can do as you wish, do walking or whatever for many more hours and still reach 100 pi, and you're still protected. So it's really individualized based upon your age, resting heart rate, and maximal heart rate.
Okay, and so a person wears an activity monitor that gets their heart rate, and so it just factors all that in, the intensity times the time, and you accumulate points in that regard.
Exactly, and this is the Mio Slice, but you can also download the app for free and use other heart rate monitors that share heart rates with other apps. So that's you don't really need to have this Mio Slice. Soon it will come for Apple Watch and other brands as well. So I think it's going to be a new standard for activity tracking.
Right, and I think the neat thing that you have there, and again, that most people do choose to do walking as their physical activity, and the other area that you're very into is the interval training. And so I'm really curious to hear more about how you do interval walking training with some of your groups.
Yeah, we have a lot of patients and also normal people that we do interval on, and that could be swimming, rowing, but walking is super easy, and not everyone, but most people can walk and can do it right outside their door and even inside their house. And the good thing with interval walking is that you find an uphill, which is good for your knees, and you don't have to walk that fast either, so it's like a brisk walk, and get out of breath. That's the tips from me. Yeah,
and you still try and do, like, if you're doing that, if you are going to do that higher intensity walking uphill, is it still the 4 minutes and then you try and take it easy for 4 minutes? Is that what it is?
So that's what we do. We ask people to get out of breath for 4 minutes, and then they can go downhill, uphill, and do this 2 to 4 times. That's a good recommendation.
And that's one of the tips that we provide in our workshops as well when we're working with healthcare providers is to give people options. That's another thing is, can give them direction, but then you can give them options. And one of the things that people say, well, I don't have 2.5 hours to exercise, which is 150 minutes a week. And so one of the things that we also talk about is the intervals as a way. So in Canada, you count telephone poles. And so you walk hard for 10 telephone poles, and then you walk easy for 5 telephone poles, and then you walk at a much more brisk pace for 10 telephone poles, and then go from that.
I think that's brilliant, and I think that even though you can't do 150 minutes per week or 75 minutes with high intensity, this interval training is so effective that the side effects are so good.
Right.
People, what we experience is that people start to do more exercise, and in the end they actually do 150 minutes or 75 minutes with high intensity. So I think it's a lack of time is the main reason for not doing exercise. So I think this is that doesn't count anymore, I think.
Yeah, and that's the feedback that we get when people do it and they try it for a little bit. They go, I didn't realize how much better I would feel by doing the more vigorous walking, and how much, from a mental health standpoint, it helps, but then also that they don't have to go as long if they, just want to do 10 or 15 minutes on their lunch hour and give a good vigorous walk in, that they can kind of get it done and it doesn't take up their whole day, so. Yeah.